The other day I was watching the Super Mario 64 Iceberg explained by Mish Kaz, and I wondered, what if someone did this for Half-Life? And then I looked at Twitter and saw that JC posted this. So yeah, this video is heavily inspired by Mish Kaz's video, and I recommend you watch it after this. The E3 1998 beta is the beta build that was showed off during E3 of 1998. There are many key differences between the versions shown and the Half-Life we have today, such as the HUD, character models, weapon models, and the level design. Quiver was the original working title for Half-Life before it was announced. It was named after the Arrowhead military base from The Mist, written by Stephen King. Quiver was also the name of a Xenian creature that was in the alpha version of Half-Life. The PlayStation 2 port of Half-Life was developed by Gearbox Software and was released in 2001. It was basically just Half-Life, but with the new HD models and a co-op campaign entitled Half-Life Decay. For the German version of Half-Life, many aspects were censored. For example, characters don't bleed when they are shot, and instead of gibbing, they fade away. When you kill the friendly NPCs, they sit on the ground and shake their head instead of dying. The Marines were also replaced with robots. This version of Barney, known as Freeze, was in the 0.52 press build and was shown off in most early 1997 media of Half-Life. He was also supposed to be hostile instead of a friendly NPC like he is in the final game. Mr. Friendly was a Xenian enemy that was cut from the final game. He is about the size of a horse and is widely known as the Rape Monster because one of its attacks would kill the player by fatal copulation. In 1997, Half-Life was entirely rewritten because the game was deemed not good enough. A lot of things stayed though, such as some maps, the weapons, the security guards, and scientists. Half-Life Uplink was a demo version of Half-Life where you could play through the Uplink chapters that were cut from the final game. It was released in February of 1999. At the end of Half-Life, the G-Man offers you a choice. Either walk through the door and take his offer, or fight a battle you have no chance of winning. If you take the battle you have no chance of winning, you get teleported into a room with a bunch of enemies, and the game fades to black. The HD pack models are a collection of models that replace the classic Half-Life models. They came with Blue Shift, which was released in 2001. Most people in the Half-Life community consider the models to be worse, myself included, even though the models have more polygons. Ivan the Space Biker is the nickname used for the original model of Gordon Freeman. He was cut though, and replaced with the Gordon we have today. Half-Life Alpha 0.52 is a leaked version of Half-Life from September of 1997 before the rewrite. It was shared on Reddit in January of 2013, but the disc it was on sold on eBay for $700. In the alpha, there are 21 maps and 6 chapters. It is very buggy and unfinished, but it can still be played through using the console. On the map C1A1C, if you no-clip out of bounds, you can find a room with a hound eye and every surface covered in Gabe Newell's face. There is little to no information on the robot grunt, why it was cut, or why it was even in the game in the first place. What we do know is that it was used in the German version of Half-Life to replace the human grunts. On February 14th, 2000, a Dreamcast port of Half-Life was announced to the public, but was cancelled on June 14th of 2001, only weeks before its shipping date. It is very similar to the PS2 version, but with minor changes. Blue Shift was originally supposed to come out as an exclusive for the Dreamcast, but since it was cancelled, it was released on PC. I couldn't find much about the red HEV suit except for this picture. Fast Walker was supposed to be a friendly NPC that would follow Gordon around and help him in combat. It was cut due to a lack of convincing AI and clear gameplay goals. The Stucco Bat was a bat-like creature that was cut from the final game. It had 6 eyes and would be found at big open areas. It was to attack the player from the air with its claws. The Big Mama, aka the Gonarch, is a boss that appears in the chapter Gonarch Slayer, where you have to fight it and kill it to proceed. It is basically a big head crab with a sack that releases baby head crabs. The Kingpin is another cut enemy from Half-Life that has a big brain and would use its psionic attacks on you. It was to be found in Zen. Bull Chicken is the model name for the Bull Squid in Half-Life's files. This is because the original name for the Bull Squid was Bull Chicken. Ted Barney is the name of a Barney model made by Ted Backman, an art director at Valve. It was left unused and replaced with the Barney we have today. Heavy Weapons Grunt, or Human Sergeant, was a cut HECU class from Half-Life. He would have an M60 and would be smoking a cigar. He attacks using his M60 or his dual rocket launcher. Although he isn't seen in the final game, his textures were used for a different HECU unit. The Barney security guards were originally supposed to be hostile towards scientists and the player. The only thing that came up when I looked for Gordon with the coffee mug was this picture. In the files, there's a model for a fighter aircraft that was cut from the final game. It seems to be based off of the real-life aircraft F-117 Nighthawk. The game was originally supposed to include a female scientist that would betray Gordon. She was supposed to be working with the Marines, but the scene with her was cut because Valve said the current technology wasn't capable to tell the story the way they wanted to. Half-Life was originally supposed to include a feature where moss would grow on walls in real time, but the feature was cut for unknown reasons. Half-Life was also shown off during E3 of 1997. The build shown off there was very similar to the one that released in 2013. Half-Life Preliminary Findings is a CD that contains early Half-Life media. It was released with Diablo Hellfire to promote Half-Life. A macOS port of Half-Life was announced in April of 1999 by Logicware, but was cancelled 3 weeks before it was supposed to release on October 19, 1999. It was cancelled because the game couldn't sell enough copies to support the ongoing development needed to keep the game up to date with the PC version. But the game was ported to Mac OS X in 2013, so you can play it now on newer Mac systems. The Charger was a cut enemy from Zen that would fly around and charge the player once it notices them. The Colt 727 carbine replaces the MP5 when you enable HD models in the settings of Half-Life. Jeff Keighley, the game journalist behind the Game Awards, has 5 different CDs that contain different builds from Half-Life. Even though many people have begged and pleaded him to release the discs, he hasn't. In the E3 1998 build of Half-Life, Mark Laidlaw is the voice actor for all the NPCs, including the scientists. Half-Life Day 1 is a pre-release demo of Half-Life that was never available to the public. It contained the start of the game up until the end of the chapter, We've Got Hostiles. There is also some minor differences between the Day 1 and the final game, such as the player being able to hold 25 grenades instead of 10. The Flocking Floater was another cut enemy from Half-Life. It was passive and would only attack if you attacked first. The Protozone is a passive creature on Zen. It is an orb-like, transparent entity that floats above the ground. Ivan the Space Biker was meant to have different colors of suits, such as a red one, green one, and blue one. The Communication Center is a cut location and chapter from Half-Life. Parts of it were reused in Half-Life Decay and Half-Life Uplink. It was cut during the rewrite of 1997. The HECU and Half-Life were going to have a desert camouflage, but Valve chose an urban-style camouflage instead because they didn't actually want the grunts to blend in. There is a very in-depth system for the scientists' fear in Half-Life. They will run away from loud noises in combat and will cower in fear when an enemy is close. I could not find much about a 1998 press party, but I could find a 1997 release party, which doesn't really make sense because the game released in 1998 instead of 97. Polyrobo was a robot that was made to show off Cold Source's skeletal animation ability. It was never planned to appear in the main storyline. Breather.mdl is an unused model that looks like a strange machine. Please note that at this point, it became harder to find information on some of the topics. I'll list all the things I couldn't find info on here. Black Glove Scientist most likely refers to the original Alpha Scientists that had versions of their models wearing black gloves. On the map C2A5G in a pre-release version of Half-Life, there used to be a landing field. The Snapbug was a cut alien enemy similar to a head crab. Not much is known other than that.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. You are Gordon Freeman, aren't you? The one they're expecting in the Lambda complex? If you can figure a way past that gargantua on the landing field and through the bunker door out there, you'll find yourself at the Lambda Lab's doorstep.
Lee Buzz Scientist refers to the unused line of dialogue you just heard. Based on the name of the file, C2A5_Psi_Lee-Buzz, it was probably supposed to be said by a scientist on the map C2A5. Originally in Half-Life 1, you were supposed to fight CIA units instead of HECU units. The Sterilizer is a machine that hangs in a room, and when you press a button, it activates, injuring or killing anything in the room. The hound eyes seen in Half-Life were originally meant to be friendly, but because most playtesters shot them before checking if they were friendly, Valve made hound eyes hostile. The Gargantuas seen in the final game were originally supposed to look like this. When I looked up Building 3.rmf, all I could find was this picture, presumably of Building 3. The Adventures of Dank and Scud is a comic about two characters from Quake, and the 6th issue features them in Half-Life.
For God's sake, open the silo doors! They're coming for us! It's our only way out! Oh my God, we're doomed!
The Half-Life audio script is a file containing most of Half-Life's dialogue. All I can find about box-art offices is this Russian video. Valvevisit.avi is a lost video that people have been searching for. I'm assuming the video is of someone visiting Valve. I did, however, find these pictures which may be linked to the video. The security complex is a cut chapter where you would go through a large warehouse. It was meant to be in the 3rd chapter of the game. C2A5G was remade at the last second as a theory that the map C2A5G was remade at the last second. I personally do think this could be true because of the screenshot showing the cut landing field on the map. Sphere.mdl is the model for a cut sphere enemy. It was a ball that would open and shoot things out of its eyes. The probe droid was another entity that was used to show off Gold Source's skeletal animation capabilities. The HKG-11 is a rifle that isn't in Half-Life, but somebody made a skin for the MP5 that turns it into an HKG-11. For some reason. I'm assuming this is another theory, saying that the Snarks and the Hornet Gun were late additions. I don't have any proof of this, though. Slick is the name of a scientist model, so Slickface Barney would probably be Barney but with Slick's face. Hunchback Barney is the name for another version of Barney. X-Lab is a cut location from Half-Life. It was cut during the 1997 rewrite, and it is believed to be an older version of the Lambda complex. That video you just saw is bullchicken360.api. Both C3A3 and C3A4 were maps that were in the Cut X-Lab chapter. In the Cut X-Lab chapter, the player was meant to play with sound equipment, nicknamed Equivocator. There isn't much known about this build other than it existed, as far as I know. Redwood's Half-Life Preview is a website made in 1998 that talks about different parts of Half-Life, such as story and graphics. The name of this is a lie. The helicopter never does fly away on the map C0A0B. That was all. If you know any more info on the things that I missed, please let me know in the comments. Also, if you want to know more about the things that I talked about, look at the links in the description. See ya.